Good morning, everyone. So what I hope to articulate over the next 10 minutes or so is how our research program is striving to advance our understanding, as Dr. Buehring mentioned, pursuing questions in fundamental areas such as healthy aging, cardiovascular disease, and pain, drawing from the wisdom of integrative medicine and utilizing the innovative tools and the rigor of science to move the field forward. All right. So in our most recent 5-year strategic plan, there are 4 interrelated domains of research that describe our collective portfolio and guide our research initiatives. It's worth noting that as these are interrelated domains, any given study or project may often fall into more than one domain. And I'll briefly describe each one of these. So the first domain, the science of mind-body connections. So our goal here is to advance our understanding of the fundamental physiological and behavioral processes underlying mind-body connections. This domain really recognizes the different components of mind-body modalities and the impact of these different components on cognitive, emotional, and physical processes, and how all these processes are all interconnected. In this next domain, our goal is to advance our understanding and study the clinical effectiveness of multimodal integrative interventions. So this domain encompasses the study of clinical outcomes across the health and disease spectrum, from prevention to enhancing resiliency to risk factor reduction, treatment, and rehabilitation. And so what do we mean by multimodal integrative interventions? So we're really recognizing the multi-component nature of many integrative therapies. So for example, yoga, which includes meditation, movement, stretch, and attention to breath, or comprehensive chiropractic care, which may include multiple manipulation techniques as well as self-care techniques. But we also mean the combination and the coordination of these integrative modalities with other modalities, technology, for example, or other conventional therapies, and I'll provide some examples of these later. Systems and translational biology of integrative medicine. So this is a domain that our director of basic and translational research, Catherine Hall, is leading, and there'll be an opportunity for us to hear a little bit more about this portfolio later. But the overall goal of this domain is to leverage advances in networks and systems biology to investigate integrative medicine across the translational spectrum. So for example, utilizing large data and machine learning to understand complex biological systems. And the studies here may span across the spectrum from genomics, metabolomics, to cell biology, animal models, to human studies and clinical trials, and eventually implementation on a public health level. The fourth domain, placebo and the science of human connection. So this area, again, was really pioneered and continues to be trailblazed by Dr. Ted Kapchuk, and the Osher Center, together with Dr. Hall's work, is continuing to advance this science. And the goal here is to advance our knowledge of placebo effects across multiple levels, from the neurobehavioral to the molecular level, to really understand the drivers of the placebo response and also how to enhance placebos to improve clinical outcome. So these could include contextual effects, the patient-provider relationship, and studying the interpersonal human connection that underlies our social interactions within and beyond the therapeutic clinical encounter. So as one example of a line of inquiry in our portfolio that illustrates particularly the first 2 domains, the science of mind-body connections and clinical effectiveness of multimodal integrative interventions, we are studying mind-body movement as a multimodal therapy in patients with chronic cardiovascular and pulmonary disease. So we're working to understand the contributions of multiple components. So like in a multimodal therapy like Tai Chi, a simplified model might describe a movement aspect, a breathing aspect, meditation and mindful awareness, and each of these components alone may have effects on desired outcomes, but might also act synergistically. So we've designed clinical trials with different control groups that attempt to isolate or control for specific components to inform our understanding. Another way we are addressing this question is to ask, what's the value of adding a mindfulness audio script to walking in an experimental paradigm where we can better control for the physical activity on a treadmill? So this is a series of studies led by our junior faculty, Dr. Kristen Kramer, and explores both impact on psychological measures and cardiovascular physiology. Within the science of mind-body connections, we are working to understand the physiological, cognitive, emotional processes that are impacted by mind-body therapies, and how these multiple processes impact self-regulation and behavior change. We're also working to understand cardiopulmonary physiology and the aerobic intensity of Tai Chi. So one exciting grant that we have pending will develop an aerobically enhanced Tai Chi intervention to see if we can increase aerobic intensity for more significant impact on cardiorespiratory fitness in patients with metabolic risk, while retaining the critical meditative mind-body aspects that have been shown to improve patient-centered outcomes. And this is an example of interface with technology and mind-body movement as part of a larger multimodal intervention. So these are images from our Mindful Steps intervention that we're studying. This intervention incorporates a Fitbit with individualized feedback, an educational website with a mind-body curriculum and mindful movement classes that are designed to promote walking for patients with COPD and heart failure. Finally, I'd like to say a few words about our NIH T32-funded postdoc research fellowship. So as one important cornerstone of our research program, we are training the next generation of researchers and ensuring the future of integrative medicine research. We gratefully acknowledge the hard work and legacy of those who had the incredible vision to create and nurture this program. Drs. Russ Phillips, David Eisenberg, Ted Kapchuk, and Roger Davis. I thank all of our mentors that have guided us through the years. Notably, several of the current Osher leadership, including myself, Darshan Mehta, and Catherine Hall, are all proud graduates of this fellowship. And we are now fortunate to be able to pay this forward. Over the years, many graduates have gone on to prominent leadership roles nationally. For example, recently Dr. Rob Saber was appointed as the Chief Wellness Officer at the Cleveland Clinic. And prior to this, he served as the chair of the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine and Health. Dr. Paula Gardner is the recently appointed director of the Primary Care Implementation Research at the Cambridge Health Alliance Center for Mindfulness and Compassion here at Harvard. And Dr. Gurjeet Birdi is now the director of the Osher Center at Vanderbilt University. As a celebration of our future in integrative medicine research, I'd like to give a glimpse of the breadth of the innovative work within our 4 domains of research that's being done by our recent graduates and current fellows. Dr. Dennis Munoz Vergara is investigating the basic science of stretching, of inflammation and inflammation resolution, with truly translational research from the bench, animal models of inflammation and what happens in connective tissue with stretch, and translating that to human studies of yoga. Dr. Ivy Ma is studying physiological signals as innovative biomarkers, looking at EEG brain dynamics, heart rate complexity, and analyses using nonlinear dynamics and applying these to mindfulness interventions for insomnia and sleep. She's also utilizing remote delivery of these interventions via mobile apps, as well as remote physiological data collection using wearables. Our first-year fellow, Dr. Jim Dorley, is studying psychologically informed physical therapy for pain and web-based mind-body interventions to increase access to the underserved. And our first chiropractic fellow, Dr. Ren Burton, is examining the relationship between chronic musculoskeletal pain, mobility, gait, and fall risk, and looking at multimodal chiropractic care for fall prevention in the elderly. Dr. Amy Yang is tackling the very fundamental question of what is an acupuncture point, She's developed a model within inflammatory bowel disease to study possible links between cutaneous and visceral pathophysiology, and will be using cutting-edge tools such as laser speckle contrast imaging to measure blood perfusion and infrared thermography at specific acupuncture points. Dr. Jacqueline Foley is interested in patients with HIV who have increased risk of cardiovascular disease from both an immune dysregulation and inflammatory etiology, as well as a psychobehavioral perspective. And she's developing mindfulness-based behavioral interventions coupled together with tailored lifestyle education to decrease cardiovascular risk. And finally, Dr. Michael Datko is looking at clinical effects and mechanisms of synergistic interventions such as vagal nerve stimulation and mindfulness meditation, and understanding the neurophysiological effects in patients with chronic pain syndromes such as migraine. And with that, I'll end by simply saying that the future of integrative medicine research at the Osher Center is indeed very bright. Thank you very much.